Stay away from him, Emily. I'm warning you, this is your only chance to walk away.
There are moments in a family when a single sentence changes the way you see everyone at the table. You don't notice it right away. It sinks in slowly, like a crack spreading across glass. The night everything began, I was standing in the kitchen of my in-laws' house in Sacramento, rinsing plates I hadn't even used. The house smelled like roasted chicken and lemon cleaner, the kind of place that looked warm from the outside and felt cold once you stayed long enough. My name is Emily Carter, and at that time, I still believed that patience could fix almost anything. I had married Daniel Brooks 3 years earlier. He was quiet, dependable, and desperate to keep peace in a family that thrived on tension. His mother, Margaret, ruled the house without ever raising her voice. She smiled when she cut you down, and she always did it in front of witnesses. His younger sister, Lauren, followed her lead, pretending innocence while repeating every rumor twice as loud. That night was supposed to be simple. A small family dinner, nothing dramatic. But drama never announces itself. It waits. Margaret set down her wineglass and looked straight at me. "Emily," she said gently, "you know we're all worried about Daniel, about the direction his life is taking." Daniel froze. I felt his hand tense under the table. She continued, still smiling. "Sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes it's a distraction." The word landed hard. Distraction. Like I was a hobby, not a wife. I laughed quietly, out of reflex, the way you do when you're not sure you've been insulted yet. Daniel said nothing. Lauren stared at her phone, but I could see the curve of her mouth lifting. That was the first lesson. Silence is loud in families like this. Over the next few weeks, small things began to pile up. Margaret insisted on handling Daniel's finances to help. Lauren casually mentioned that I didn't fit the Brooks image at a charity event. Invitations stopped coming through me and went directly to Daniel. Decisions were made without my name ever being spoken. And Daniel kept asking me to be patient. "You know how she is," he'd say. "She doesn't mean harm." But harm doesn't need intention. It just needs permission. One evening, as we drove home from another strained visit, Daniel finally said, "Mom thinks it might be better if we take a break, just for a while." I stared out the window, watching streetlights blur past. In that moment, something shifted inside me. Not anger, not yet. Just a quiet understanding that I was being moved out of place, piece by piece, and no one was going to stop it for me. Some people love revenge stories because they're loud and satisfying. But real ones don't start with revenge. They start with endurance, with swallowing words, with realizing that your kindness is being mistaken for weakness. That night, lying awake beside a husband who had already chosen comfort over loyalty, I made a promise to myself. I would not beg to belong where I was being quietly erased. And Margaret Brooks, whether she knew it or not, had just begun a game she believed she couldn't lose. If you've ever been made to feel small by the people who call themselves family, you already know. This was only the beginning. After that night, the house between Daniel and me grew quieter, but not calmer. Silence started to feel like a strategy instead of an accident. Margaret didn't confront me again right away. She didn't need to. She shifted tactics. Calls to Daniel became daily, sometimes twice a day, always when I wasn't around. When I walked into the room, his voice would lower, his answers turning vague. "We'll talk later," he'd say, eyes avoiding mine. later never came. A week after the dinner, Daniel told me his mother had offered him an opportunity, a position at a real estate firm owned by one of her old friends. Better pay, better future. The catch was subtle, wrapped in concern. The firm was in Palo Alto, a long commute. Long enough, Margaret suggested, that Daniel might need a small apartment nearby. Just during the week, Daniel explained, trying to sound reasonable. It's temporary. Temporary is a dangerous word. It sounds harmless until it becomes permanent. I asked him where I fit into this plan. He hesitated, just for a second too long. Mom thinks maybe some space would help us reset. There it was again. Not her opinion, her decision. Delivered through him, so her hands stayed clean. That weekend, Margaret invited us over to talk things through. I almost didn't go. Part of me already knew how it would end, but another part still believed clarity could save something. The living room was spotless, staged like a courtroom. Lauren sat beside their mother, arms crossed, ready. Margaret spoke first, calm and precise. Emily, this isn't personal, she said. But Daniel has always been sensitive. He needs stability, not emotional pressure. I felt heat rise in my chest. Emotional pressure. From me. I tried to speak, but Lauren cut in softly. We just think you expect too much from him. Not everyone is built for intensity. Daniel stared at the floor. He didn't disagree. That hurt more than their words. Margaret leaned forward. A trial separation might be best, just until things cool down. A separation I hadn't asked for. A verdict already decided. I realized then that this wasn't about fixing a marriage. It was about removing an obstacle. Me. When I finally spoke, my voice surprised me. It didn't shake. If Daniel wants this, he should say it himself. All eyes turned to him. He swallowed. I think maybe Mom's right. That sentence landed heavier than any insult. In that moment, I understood how loneliness could exist even when you weren't alone. I packed a bag that night. Not because I agreed, but because staying would have meant begging, and I refused to do that. As I walked out, Margaret hugged me, whispering, "This is for the best." I nodded, playing the role she'd written for me. The understanding wife. The temporary inconvenience. But as I drove away, something hardened inside me. Not rage, awareness. They believed I would fade quietly, grateful for the scraps of dignity they left me. They believed endurance meant submission. They were wrong. And they had no idea that pushing me out of that house was the first move that would cost them far more than they ever planned to lose. Living alone should have felt like relief. Instead, it felt like being erased in slow motion. I moved into a small rental on the edge of town, a place with thin walls and a humming refrigerator that kept me awake at night. Daniel helped me carry 2 boxes up the stairs. He stood in the doorway afterward, hands in his pockets, looking like a guest who didn't know how long he was expected to stay. "This doesn't mean anything bad," he said. "Mom just wants what's best for everyone." I nodded. I was getting good at that. At first, Daniel still came by, once a week. Then, once every 2 weeks. His calls grew shorter, his voice more distant. Every conversation ended the same way. Things are complicated right now. What he didn't say was that Margaret had taken full control. I found out through Lauren, who never missed an opportunity to sound concerned. She called one afternoon, her tone almost kind. Almost. "I thought you should know," she said. "Mom's been helping Daniel reorganize his finances. You know, protecting him. protecting him from me. Margaret had moved Daniel's savings into an account she co-managed. She'd framed it as responsibility, as guidance. Daniel agreed, because saying no to her had never been his strength. A week later, I received an email from a lawyer I didn't recognize. It was polite, clinical. A request to review documents related to marital assets and future arrangements. Margaret didn't call me herself. She never did. Power, I learned, is quiet when it's confident. When I confronted Daniel, his voice cracked. She's just being careful. She thinks you might try to take advantage. The accusations stung more than I expected. After years of shared bills, shared plans, shared promises, I had become a risk to manage. Margaret invited me to lunch soon after, a public place, a cafe she liked because everyone there knew her name. She arrived perfectly composed, ordered for both of us, smiled like nothing had changed. "I hope you're settling in," she said. "Transitions are hard." I asked her directly why a lawyer was involved. She folded her napkin slowly. "Emily, I'm protecting my son. You're emotional right now. That makes people unpredictable." There it was, the narrative she'd chosen. Calm mother, unstable wife. "I've never done anything to hurt Daniel," I said. "No," she replied smoothly. "But intentions don't matter when outcomes are uncertain." She leaned closer. "If you cooperate, this can all be very dignified." Dignified. Another word for quiet, for disappearing without a scene. As she stood to leave, she placed a hand on my shoulder. Not hard, just long enough to remind me who had the upper hand. Driving home, I pulled over and cried for the first time since I'd left the house. Not loud sobs, the kind that catch in your chest and won't come out. The kind that come from realizing someone else is rewriting your life while you're still living it. That night, I sat alone on the floor of my apartment, surrounded by unpacked boxes, and replayed every moment I'd stayed silent. Every time I'd chosen peace over truth. Margaret believed control meant ownership. She believed patience was weakness, and she believed I would eventually accept the version of myself she'd created. But something inside me was starting to resist that story. I didn't know how yet. I didn't have a plan. All I knew was this: I was done letting other people define my place. And the more power Margaret showed, the clearer it became that she was afraid of something she couldn't control. Me. The first official blow landed on a Tuesday morning. I was at work when my phone buzzed with an email notification. Subject line: temporary restraining order, review required. For a moment, I thought it had been sent to the wrong person. That kind of thing didn't happen to people like me. People who paid their bills. People who avoided conflict. People who kept their voices low. Then I opened it. Margaret was requesting a temporary restraining order, not against Daniel, against me. The document was written in careful, sterile language. Erratic behavior. Emotional instability. Repeated attempts to pressure and manipulate. Each phrase was a quiet knife. No screaming accusations, just a clean, legal suggestion that I was a threat. I called Daniel immediately. He didn't answer. By the time he finally called back that night, his voice sounded exhausted, like someone who had been thinking all day for him. "She's scared," he said. "You showed up unannounced last week. She thinks you're spiraling." I closed my eyes. I had shown up to drop off paperwork she'd requested. I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't even gone inside. "She's building a case," I said, "and you're letting her." Silence stretched between us. "I don't know what to do," Daniel whispered. "She says this is the only way to keep things calm." Calm, that word again. calm, as long as I disappeared. A week later, I received another letter. Margaret had filed an emergency petition to freeze joint assets, accounts I'd contributed to, savings I'd helped build. The justification was always the same: concern, protection, stability. I felt like I was watching someone slowly board up my life from the outside. The worst part wasn't the money, it was the way people began to look at me. Daniel's aunt stopped returning my messages. Lauren posted vague quotes online about choosing peace over chaos. Even my own parents asked if I was doing okay, their voices careful, cautious, like I might break if spoken to too directly. Margaret never raised her voice. She didn't need to. She let institutions do the shouting for her. The breaking point came when I was served papers at my apartment. Standing in my doorway, a stranger handed me an envelope and asked me to sign. My hands shook as I did. Inside was Margaret's final move: a formal request that Daniel file for separation on grounds of emotional distress, citing her testimony as evidence. I slid down the wall and sat on the floor, the papers spread out in front of me like proof that I'd failed some test I didn't know I was taking. For a long time, I stayed there, listening to the refrigerator hum, watching the light fade through the blinds. This was the moment she expected me to give up, to sign quietly, to accept the role she'd written for me. Unstable wife, inconvenient presence, problem neatly removed. But instead of panic, something else settled in. Clarity. Margaret wasn't protecting Daniel. She was protecting the story she told herself about control, about motherhood, about power. And the harder she pushed, the clearer it became that she needed me, silent, for that story to survive. I stood up, wiped my face, and gathered the papers into a neat stack. If she wanted a fight, she'd chosen the wrong woman to underestimate. Because I had nothing left to lose, and everything left to take back. I didn't call Daniel back that night. For the first time since everything started, I stopped trying to explain myself to someone who had already decided not to hear me. Instead, I called a lawyer. Her name was Rachel Morris. She listened without interrupting while I told her everything, from Margaret's helpful concern to the restraining order to the frozen accounts. When I finally stopped talking, she was quiet for a moment. "This isn't protection," she said. "This is coercive control, and it's documented." That word landed differently than anything Margaret had thrown at me. Control. Not care, not fear. Control. Rachel asked me to forward every email, every text, every legal notice. As I dug through my phone and laptop, patterns emerged that I hadn't seen before. Margaret always spoke in writing when it mattered. She avoided phone calls. She CC'd people strategically. She used the language of safety to justify restriction. "She's careful," Rachel said. Careful people leave trails. The next step was uncomfortable but necessary. Rachel advised me to request discovery. Financial records, account changes, communications tied to the frozen assets. It felt aggressive, like crossing a line I'd been trained my whole life not to cross. But crossing lines, I was learning, was sometimes the only way to survive. A week later, Rachel called me early in the morning. "We found something," she said. Margaret had moved money out of Daniel's accounts months before the separation, transferring it into a trust under her control, not to protect him from me, but to shield it from being considered marital property. She'd done it quietly, assuming I'd never look. "She's been planning this," Rachel said, "long before you left the house."
This is your home now.
The betrayal settled heavy in my chest. Not just Margaret's, but Daniel's silence in the face of it. I asked Rachel what came next. "We respond," she said, strategically. The restraining order was challenged first. Rachel submitted evidence showing that Margaret's claims didn't align with my documented behavior. No threats, no harassment, no instability, just proximity she didn't like. Then came the financial response. Motions filed, accounts flagged, the trust questioned. Margaret reacted the way people always do when their control is threatened. She escalated. She sent Daniel long messages about loyalty, about gratitude, about how much she'd sacrificed for him. She told extended family that I was turning this into a war, that I was trying to destroy the family. For the first time, though, the story didn't land the way she expected. Daniel started asking questions, real ones. Why money had been moved without his knowledge. Why a restraining order had been necessary if I'd never raised my voice. Why every solution involved cutting me out completely. When he showed up at my apartment unannounced one evening, I didn't feel panic. I felt steady. "I didn't know," he said, holding the printed bank statements Rachel had helped him request. "I swear I didn't know." I believed that he hadn't known everything. I also saw clearly how convenient that ignorance had been. "I'm not asking you to choose me," I said. "I'm asking you to see the truth." He nodded slowly, like someone waking up from a long sleep. Behind the scenes, the system was shifting. Judges asked harder questions. Lawyers stopped using Margaret's language so easily. Her calm certainty began to crack under scrutiny. And for the first time since this began, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Ground beneath my feet. The fight wasn't over, not even close, but it was no longer one-sided, and Margaret could feel it. The resolution didn't arrive with shouting or slammed doors. It came the way real endings usually do, quietly, in a room with beige walls and a clock that ticked too loud. Margaret sat 3 seats down from me in the mediation office. She looked smaller there somehow. Not weaker exactly, just exposed. The confidence she wore so easily in public didn't translate well under fluorescent lights and legal scrutiny. Her lawyer did most of the talking. Fewer declarations this time, more careful phrasing. When the restraining order was formally dismissed, no one celebrated. It was simply noted, filed, closed. The financial matters followed. The trust was dissolved. The transferred funds were returned to where they should have been. Not as a punishment, just a correction, a quiet reset. Margaret didn't look at me once. Daniel sat between us, hands folded, listening. When the mediator asked if there was anything else to address, he cleared his throat. "I should say something," he said. Margaret stiffened. "I let things happen because it was easier," he continued. "I confused calm with right, and that wasn't fair." It wasn't a grand apology. It didn't fix everything, but it was the truth, spoken out loud, and that mattered. Margaret finally spoke then. Her voice was low, controlled. "I did what I thought was necessary." The mediator nodded politely and moved on. No one argued with her. No one needed to. The record spoke for itself. When it was over, we walked out separately. No confrontation, no final words, just doors opening and closing behind us. Outside, the air felt different, lighter. I stood on the steps for a moment, letting the sun hit my face, feeling something loosen inside my chest that I hadn't realized was still tight. Daniel joined me. "I'm going to need time," he said. "I know," I replied, and for once, that was enough. We didn't reconcile right away. We didn't rush to rebuild what had been broken. Healing, I learned, isn't a dramatic arc. It's a series of quiet choices made consistently over time. Margaret retreated from the center of things after that. She wasn't shunned. She wasn't punished publicly. She simply lost her audience. The subtle authority she once wielded no longer worked the same way. People listened more carefully, asked more questions. Silence followed her where certainty once had. Months later, I moved into a new place. Not bigger, not grander, just mine. I hung my own photos, chose my own furniture, slept through the night. Daniel and I began talking again, slowly, with boundaries that hadn't existed before. Whether we would rebuild or redefine our relationship was still an open question, but it would be decided without fear. Sometimes, late at night, I think about how close I came to disappearing quietly, the way Margaret expected. How easily dignity can be taken when you mistake endurance for strength. What I learned is this: justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it simply restores what was always yours and steps back. And in that quiet, there is room to breathe again, room to heal, room to begin.